Hello and welcome to the Hat Trick presented by the ICC. I'm Charlie Stillitano, joined by Rocky Ray Hudson and Neil Barnett. Former Ajax, Milan, Barcelona, and Newcastle striker Patrick Kluivert will join us in the first half hour of the show to discuss his role as the director of La Masia, Barcelona's heralded youth system. Later, we're going to talk about the decline of the traditional striker. Why are the best attackers in the world playing wide? And where is the next generation of number nines? Just a reminder, all of our podcasts are available on internationalchampionscup.com, iTunes, and Spotify. Ray, Neil, and I can also be heard every morning on The Football Show on Sirius XM FC. Let's dive right into it. Neely, Rocky.
Now, just go straight into the Patrick Kluivert is with us. I'll put a whoosh effect right after that.
Okay.
And then you're just going to jump right in.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Patrick Kluivert is with us. For our younger generation, Patrick was one of the best.
Can you redo that, Charlie? Just
Sure.
more like Patrick Kluivert is with us. You know,
Okay.
if he's right here with us.
Okay. Patrick Kluivert is with us. For our younger generation, Patrick was one of the best strikers in the world from the late 90s to the early 2000s. He came up through the Ajax youth system and played for the likes of AC Milan, Barcelona, and Newcastle. And he won the Golden Boot in the 2000 Euros with the Netherlands. Patrick now serves as the director of Barcelona's La Masia, and he joins us in Barcelona right now. Patrick, my friend, so good to speak with you again. How's the weather out there?
Perfect.
Okay.
So then we're going to pop that Kluivert interview in there, right? At the end of the Kluivert interview, we're going to do the whoosh. Then we're going to put a read in, and then we're just going to jump right into our conversation here, which will go about 30 minutes on the decline of the number 9. And I sent you guys over some materials just looking back. I mean, Neil and I were talking before the show how many great strikers there were in the 90s and 2000s.
Where's the material?
Tuesday's pod. Tuesday's pod. Yep.
Tuesday's pod. Okay, there it is.
Right. It should be at the top of your inbox too.
Okay.
But because, I mean, Neil and I were looking ahead to like who are the great strikers of this time right now in the next decade. All the top strikers are 30 years old. You look at the guys of the future, you know, Holland, Tammy Abraham, you know, is Latoro an out-and-out striker? Gabriel Jesus, you know, these guys aren't nearly as good as the players in the 90s and the 2000s. But if you look at the wide players, all the goal scorers, all the stars now are your Neymars, your Mbappes, Ronaldo, Messi. They all play from the wide position.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last Ballon d'Or winner that was an out-and-out striker was Andrei Shevchenko in 2004, 16 years ago. If you look at the Ballon d'Or winners and at least the top 3 in the 90s and early 2000s, there was at least 1 or 2 strikers in the top 3 every year. Now, you don't see them.
And that's also because these guys, they're not scoring all the goals like they used to. Now the goals are scored by, you know, Barcelona ruined it for Ray, right? And then they also ruined it for the fucking number 9s. I'm going to use that, except I'm not going to say fucking.
There we go. Oh, shoot, they're muted. Let me unmute them.
Okay.
No,
ready?
no.
Cool.
Yeah, yep.
So, Charlie, you can just start. All right, let's talk a little bit about strikers and then just kind of go into it. Just rock and roll.
My wife this morning, we're walking the dog. I said to my wife this morning, "Hun, we're doing a show on the number 9s today." She said to me, "The number 9s? What's that?" And I said, "That's what Giorgio Canaglia played." Everyone knew what Giorgio was. He's a goal scorer. And those big number 9s, fellas, I mean, I want to hear, Ray, in your day, you had some big number 9s, didn't you? Even in the North American Soccer League, I think they were like some monsters.
Well, for my club, the centre forward, it was an iconic figure at Newcastle United. Jackie Milburn, the great man, local lad.
Statue outside St James's Park still of
Wow.
Jackie Milburn.
Malcolm MacDonald, another one. And these were central number 9s. You know, for me, a centre forward and a striker, Neil, they're two different things. So you know, you can describe the same player with that term, but really it's a different setup. I think centre forward's always been that positional play. And nowadays, I think part of the reason is that where it started to conceivably, perception is it's faded out of favour, is that once upon a time, those forwards were real headhunters in that middle of the park. Nowadays, the game has changed so much that they are called on to do a lot more than just, I don't want to say hang around and score, because scoring a goal is the hardest thing in football to do. It's the hardest. But Gerd Muller was probably the most purest example of an out-and-out centre forward. And he was one of those players where you can see it, that that's all he was there to do. And he did it incredibly well. Quinalia was another one. Cleaners, beautiful centre forwards, but nowadays you look at Cristiano and Messi, they're not centre forwards.
Well, the other thing is, though, in those days, the centre forward was the top of the bill. Come and see.
They were the glamour boys.
Yeah. They were the number one sex appeal.
Right.
And
Giorgio said, imagine being captain of Lazio, the Italian national team, and being a striker in Rome. Said to me, you know how many women I had?
He scored on the pitch. He scored off it. But the fact is that we got to the end of the 1990s and it just began to change. But it's also a fact that in the early part of this century, the great centre forwards went on for longer, and the path through for the younger ones kind of got blocked off by them. So where we are now, you can look at France, top of the league, Paris Saint-Germain, Cavani, well into his 30s. Italy, top of the league, Juventus, Higuain, well into his 30s. Spain, top of the league, Barcelona, Suarez, well into his 30s. Second, Real Madrid, Benzema, well into his 30s. Germany, top of the league, Lewandowski, well into his 30s. England, top of the league. All right, Firmino is the odd one out. But below him in second place, Aguero, well into his 30s. Third place, Vardy, moving on to his 40s, for God's sake. He's so old. These guys are going on. And, of course, my man, who everybody agrees is the greatest centre-forward of all time, Didier Drogba, won his Champions League when he was 34 years old. Not
the Black
24.
Canalia, as I call him. Here's what I say to you. It's really more of a question. And Ray always says this to us. Barcelona, Pep Guardiola ruined the game for me because it can never raise to that standard again. I think that they killed the number 9. They actually took him out, put him against the wall, and shot him.
Well, they had Etu, who was amongst the best number 9s this century.
Oh, my God. What a player, but they got rid of him.
And replaced him with Inzaghi, who they didn't like, Ibrahimovic, who they didn't like. So they put Messi there. And since then, the only real centre-forward they've had is Suarez.
Right. False number 9, of course, as it was reputedly...
what is a false number 9,
really?
Because,
I mean,
no,
honestly.
like, I'm not being cute. When I talked to my wife this morning,
Sure.
She's like, "What's the show today?" She loves Ray. It's like not about you and me, Neil. Nothing about you and me. But she's like, "What is Ray going to talk about?" I said, "Ray's going to talk about the false 9." I said that to her. She's like, "What the hell's the false 9?" I'm trying to figure out what the 9 is. Now I got to figure out what the false 9 is.
Charlie, you go. You know, this is football. And it's amazing. We're talking about this dying breed of centre forwards, if you like. And you go back to in the 50s when my father told me these stories about this team from Hungary that went to Wembley and didn't play with a centre forward as such, and they absolutely confounded, baffled, and just completely confused the English, who were at that time riding on the highest wave of world renown.
It was a wave of ignorance. We'd lost to USA in the World Cup in 1950.
Right. USA. So, but on that afternoon at Wembley Stadium, the world was shown that this game of football doesn't really particularly have to have that WM formation and with that number 9, because these players, Kosic and Puskas and the great, my father's favorite, Hiraguchi, just reinvented the wheel in a way. And so many times it's come round full circle that we've seen some of the great players in world football, the greats. But was Pelé a number 9?
No,
was
a 10.
Maradona number 9?
No.
But the fact is that they played.
But they weren't. They weren't.
Nines.
They played, but they were number 10s.
Yeah.
And everyone saw Pele, Maradona, and Pele made the shirt famous. And after that, it's funny. Alessandro Del Piero. We went out. We were out in Los Angeles, and we went to see Landon Donovan play. And he said to me, Charlie, can you introduce me to Landon? Of course, as they walk up, they're like, forget about Charlie. Charlie's nothing. He's like the crud under the refrigerator, right? That you get, you scrape the refrigerator out. So that was me. I'm standing there and Alex says, can I have your number 10, a jersey? Because I've collected number 10s. So what he has a collection of number 10s. It's probably, second to none because, Alessandro Del Piero played for many years. So he asked all the time, the other number 10. The number 9, the classic Gerd Mueller, the classic Giorgio Canaglia, the classic Ian Rush, the guy that Van Basten, the big guy who could, in some cases like Van Basten, hold the ball, do anything with the ball, but also pounded the ball into the net. Or, I remember, God, now I'm gonna kick myself. The manager. For Celtic, Martin O'Neill said to me, I said, he was friendly with us. He came over with Celtic when they were in the international. Well, this was the Champions World Series. And he said, I remember Canaglia. I said, he scored 600 something goals in 600 something games, whatever. And he goes, yeah. And if you add them all up, they could make it to midfield, the distance and the goals. And he was teasing him. But Van Nistelrooy reminded me of that, right? Like, here's a guy that always, his job was to just put it in. Not to do, Van Basten did some things I still can't believe, right? The guys that Van
Nistelrooy was at Manchester United for 3 years and got 1 goal from outside the penalty area. 1 goal in his 3 years there.
And he scored over 100 goals.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he scored 4 goals.
Yeah, no, you're right on the list. Let's move to the 1998 World Cup, where Patrick Kluivert played, and that team, that squad that Patrick Kluivert was a part of, the Netherlands squad, which probably played the most entertaining football in that World Cup,
unquestionably,
under the management of Gus Hiddink. They had 3 centre forwards in the squad, and none of them were bad because they were Patrick Kluivert, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, and Pierre Van Hooijdonk. And Van Hooijdonk was a terrific centre forward in England, particularly for Nottingham Forest. They were 3 outstanding strikers.
Really. Jimmy Floyd.
Croatia had Davor Suker, who was the top scorer in the tournament. Brazil had some geezer called Ronaldo.
Not bad.
And we are talking about, England had Alan Shearer. We are talking about top strikers right the way across the board. Italy, that tournament, would have had Christian Vieri, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the winners of the tournament, France, had the worst centre forward in the competition, a guy called Stephen Guivache, who I think got 1 goal the whole tournament. Stefan Guivache, correct. He was so bad, Charlie, that at the end of the tournament he was bought by Newcastle, and he went to Newcastle, and he was even
statue with it.
He was even worse for Newcastle than he was for France. And you go on to the European Championships in 2000, and France had discovered David Trezeguet, who went on to become a great Juventus player, or by then already was,
and a very classic striker.
Yeah. And you get to the 2002 World Cup, and Ronaldo was his swan song in a way in international football. And after that, the centre forwards just started to disappear. And you got to 2006, and everyone played with 1 centre forward and 1 number 10. And the number 10 was more important than the centre forward. So Italy won the World Cup with Luca Toni, who nobody remembers because he was pretty laboured and leaden, and everyone remembers the 10 who was probably for the first hour Totti, and for the last half hour Del Piero, and
but he had great hair, Tony. Luca Toni, good, tall, good-looking kid.
Yeah,
and he also has this fame. Beckenbauer said that when Luca Toni went to play for Bayern for a couple of years, and Beckenbauer said, he reminds me of a guy named Giorgio Canaglia that used to play for us.
But France, who were the runners-up, they had Thierry Henry up front, but all he did in that World Cup was really work for Zinedine Zidane at number 10. And the number 10s have become the most important players, the sexy players. And then we moved on to 2010, and Spain won the World Cup, Rocky, without the centre-forward. Torres had done well for them in 2008 when they won the European Championships and was shortlisted for the Ballon d'Or. But by 2010, they didn't have a centre-forward. They won it without one.
And this is a modernisation of football, I think, guys, in a lot of ways.
They just didn't have anyone who was any good.
There probably was some really good players at the central position, but not to the extent of the great players that we've talked about before, the likes of Romario and Crespo and players like this that were central killers, right? Real number 9s, and they were, you know, of their time. You know, I think nowadays, Neil, in the era that you're talking about, where it started to slip away, and it's arguable, certainly debatable, because I think, you know, in Haaland, we're seeing the emergence of a player that is in that area of the old-fashioned killer number 9.
He looks like a throwback. Let me ask you this, Ray, because you lived it, right? Giorgio Canaglia used to say to me, and I'm sure Gerd Mueller the same way, you know, they had one job.
Right.
There were only one job. And he said it's the only job that matters in the game.
That's true.
Because the goalkeeper can only screw things up. Yep. He can't, you know, Giorgio would say, I have to win the game. The goalkeeper could only tie the game. Okay. And I get that. Right. But you also had the 35-yard line, right? Where this was created, Neil, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but you couldn't be offside if you were 35 yards out. It wasn't the midfield line like we have in regular soccer. So the NASL had this rule. So it stretched the game out, right? But it also created an opportunity for guys like Giorgio and Gerd Mueller to extend their career, if you will, because now you could hang up there and score goals, and your gift was still a gift that was useful. So I'm asking you, Rocky, I think that you started this program by saying we're asking them to do different things. Giorgio would say, my job is not to run back and check guys and catch guys. My job is to score goals. Now, is that what killed the number 9, fellas?
I think that's a big component. It has to be, you know, when you look at the way that this progressive game has just taken a different advent, and it cannot be just down to coincidence that those players now are being asked to pressure the lane, to you never saw these players that we're talking about extending themselves and expending their energy to tracking back 70, 80 yards or to instantly start the press the way Liverpool are doing now to the nth degree. And even there,
we blame Barcelona. I blame Barcelona, but maybe it was Jose Mourinho we should be blaming.
No, hang on. I'm going to disagree with you all here, both here. I only 50% agree with what you say. Something else happened at the end of the 1990s. And through the 1990s, increasingly, we went from 2 strikers to 1 striker.
Yeah, that's true.
And Juventus and Ajax in the 90s were playing 4-3-3. And the strikers no longer had a partner, no longer had a number 10. Now, in fact, in that 2006 World Cup, when the number 10 became the second striker, but he was very much a midfielder. He wasn't a real support. And we stopped having strikers as a pair. And you never talk about pairs now. And I think that's what killed the
That's a
striker.
great point, Neil. But you also never talk about two wingers anymore.
No,
I mean,
don't.
really, you don't see two out-and-out wingers.
Well, there's no
the way
point
they
in a
used to
winger
be.
going outside the defence and crossing the ball if there's only one geezer in the penalty area.
Or
When they
none.
had two and a third and a midfielder or the other winger joining them, and you could get 3 or 4 in there was a point in doing it. Now there's no point in doing it. You have to cut in and pass the ball into the penalty area because someone's got to turn and score.
It's the old Russian hockey move, right? You had a guy who was righty on the left wing, so he could come in, cut in, and take his shot with his dominant hand. And so we now have, like you said, you could be, a guy like Lionel Messi, and you start on the right, but your left foot's gifted beyond God's possibility they give most people, and he scores. How many goals does he score coming across the box and just placing it perfectly into the corner? Look, it's changed, but it doesn't mean that you still. It's just this big guy that scores goals, intimidates people, and scores goals. Didier Drogba. What happened to these guys? They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, but why are the good ones old and still playing? Edin Dzeko, another one in Italy. There's so many who are still.
Karim Benzema.
Yeah, Olivier Giroud, the World Cup winner. They're still these are the old guys. The last World Cup, Giroud, who didn't score in the tournament, won it in his 30s, and the runner-up centre forward Mandzukic, who scored a few goals, scored a goal in the final. Also in his 30s.
But Neil, I think a part of this as well, in trying to solve this, you're never going to be able to tie a complete ribbon around it. I think it's the evolution of this game.
The evolution of the game.
It's just accelerated more, it seems. That now we're looking around, or for a Shearer now, or for a Romario or a Crespo.
Well, do you think that because the generation underneath those 30-somethings now, there only seems to be Harry Kane and Icardi who have really made a name for themselves, and Icardi's drifting at the moment.
Struggling.
And now, do you think that there aren't actually the real examples now for the teenagers? They don't want to be these guys anymore. They don't want to see that as top of the bill. They see Lionel and Cristiano, wide players, as top of the bill. They see Neymar. And when they look at the kids, they see Jadon Sancho and Kylian Mbappe.
Like the one everybody's is the flavour of the month in Haaland now. When one comes along like that, there's your centre forward. There's the traditional one that we're talking about. Now, is it because of his pure physique? Probably. And I still think he's going to get
it has a lot to do with it.
Charlie, you saw him in the last game that he played there at the weekend.
He whiffed it,
really
as I said. He whiffed it.
But it's
and then when I saw it, all I could think of you told me he's never going to be world class, and you're always right.
What do you think? What do you think, Marcus?
I keep coming back to the fluidity of the game is the biggest component, where you like all those fabulous players that we talked about from yesteryear were basically, they were the tail that was wagging the dog. That's not the case anymore. It's the whole structure of the team, and a lot of people could say sadly for it, because the art of goal scoring, as you've said, Charlie, that's what people pay to see. They don't come to watch flipping goalkeepers. They don't come to watch the great Maldinis in defence. They don't come to watch even the Iniestas in the midfield. They come to see goals.
What do you think of Marcus Thuram at Borussia Mönchengladbach? No,
not for me.
No,
not for me, Neil.
I don't know what to tell you, Neil. But look, it's also the gifts that the guys have. I mean, maybe they just don't have these guys that are gifted like they were before. And
Victor Onihan at Lille, Moussa Dembele at Lyon. Any of these players?
Andy Carroll.
Tammy Abraham at Chelsea. Yeah,
Tammy Abraham is a throwback too. He's very awkward, hard to control. Hard to figure out what he's going to do. I mean, I think he surprises himself
With all
sometimes.
due respect, though, do you put him in that? Can you conceive of him being in the Patrick Vieiras, the Gerd Mullers, the Crespos, the Shearers?
To me, the best ever was Van Basten. I mean, the guy was ridiculous.
Van Nistelrooy as well was a stupendous footballer for me.
But, you know, and I just don't get it. I don't get it that I would think there'd be more guys like Holland around. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Someone
amazingly, let me just say, Neil, amazing for a player like Haaland with that physique that I mentioned there before. He's seldom a target for the direct balls into the area for an aerial attack. You don't see his team playing towards what you would think could and should be one of his biggest strengths. It's not. It's him making those runs. And even then, he's making them runs away from the goal. Even he is not the type of centre forward that we're talking about in the classic mould.
Yeah, that hangs around in front of the goal.
If you were managing a team now and you were looking for a young striker, where would you look?
I mean, look, all the usual suspects are from the same country, right? You got to start at this day and age with France and in Brazil and Argentina, and I think it's almost goal scorers is what you have to have. In Spain too. Spain has more. You look at Spain, you think of the gifted midfielders, the gifted, talented players they keep producing. But I guess Neil, it could be anywhere. It doesn't matter, but I don't think they're coming out in numbers out of any places right now. And look at Brazil. Since Ronaldo, we've had guys with the shortest names in the world, Joe and everything else, and they're useless. These are center forwards.
He was pretty useless, Joe. Yeah,
but I'm saying, it's just bizarre to me that. I guess if you have 1,000 players coming out a year like you do in Brazil and Argentina and now in France and Spain, so many wonderful players. What I'm shocked about is there's just not a lot of players coming out that are.
Let's just shout out two that we
goal scorers.
Let's shout out two who we haven't mentioned, neither of whom are traditional number nines, but are number nines of the current era. Robert Firmino, who I think has probably become the best in the world, and is of that middle 20s age group. But he's almost more of a Lionel Messi number 9 than of a old Ronaldo number 9.
Yeah.
And the other one is Gabriel Jesus, who landed at Manchester City looking as though he was going to be the new superb number 9. He tailed off. He's kind of half come back. It'll be very interesting as Aguero gets older, whether he'll take his place or whether he'll finally hold down the place on the wing. I mean, he's got to hold down the place in the team.
The one that is the emerging star in the position that we're talking about, guys, I really think is Lautaro. Martinez.
But he's a 10, isn't he?
I don't think he is, Neil. I don't think he is a 10 at all. I think he's much more.
But they play with the two strikers, Neil, that you're talking about.
Yeah.
They play with two
guys.
Lukaku's
the number 9 and Altura's
number 10. But I agree with Rocky. He's a guy that can go, strong, he's fast. He could be I think even better than Aguero, to be honest with you. I think he can be.
Certainly the heir apparent to Suarez is as far as I can see, the player to be taken. Messi's played with him at the international level, loves what he sees. It's an open secret, the worst kept secret in Barcelona, that Messi wants his countrymen there because he sees in him his best friend in Suarez.
Yeah.
He is that good, believe me. And yet, even Lautaro has got that sort of capability, and not just capability, but that he has got that. He can be utilized in that different way as well. It's similar to what Benzema does. Benzema doesn't anymore just be that point man for Real Madrid. The mobility is demanded of him by Zidane to drop back. We see it all the time. Yeah. And the goal moochers, the goal hangers, call them what you like. Yes, they. Yeah.
No, that is.
And I think
I agree with that.
I think it's worth pointing out as well that where we've said the wingers have become the number 1 in sex appeal, the fact is that the wingers have changed, and Cristiano Ronaldo is not built like the wingers of yesteryear.
The old days, for sure.
And Leroy Sané is built like the centre forwards of yesteryear. If Leroy Sané comes charging at you, the first thing you do isn't jockey him and try and stop him. The first thing you do is get out the bloody way, because it is an express train coming at you. He's so
but that's
powerful.
the same with, look at Cristiano. He's a number 7. Now
In
he's
a number 9 spot.
30s. He's a number 9 now, because look, they can afford the luxury. They have a lot of good players on that team. They can afford the luxury of having him hang out up top. Okay. And by the way, they were doing that at Real Madrid too. And Bale said, I want to just hang out. And you know what they said to him? When you score 500 goals, you can hang out too. Okay. And that's the reality of it. There's certain players that have that luxury. And I think what it comes down to is goal scorers. And I really mean that. It's a subtle difference that we're talking about here, and I think Ray hit on it with Lautaro, is that he doesn't have to be a traditional number 9, but it's goal scorers.
Yeah,
you know?
and the one that's got to be given the mention, and I know the three of us are big-time admirers, is Robert Lewandowski, who is continually being
absolutely
up there with the very best. Cavani, his head is there, but Neil keeps coming back to the age of this fading of these types of players, and he's dead right. Because it doesn't seem like there's an abundance of those types of players anymore. For what reason? I think it goes back to the mystery of the the development of the game is much more fluid.
Well, somebody's going to come along in the next few years and become an absolute megastar, because they're an old-fashioned centre forward.
Really, you think you're going to see another good Muller?
Well, Lautaro Martinez
it'll probably be a child of Ibrahimovic.
Superstar, you know what I mean? It could be.
On that
Lautaro, he could be. The kid is strong. He's fast. He's good. I hope Inter doesn't lose him, Pete, because that would really be a shame. But especially, how many years does Messi have left, you think, Ray?
2.
Yeah. There you go. I wouldn't leave for just 2 years. Huh? And one's already confused. This whole season's been confused.
All right, that's
it
good.
has changed. All right, good.
Perfect. Great stuff, boys.
All
A lot of fun.
Right. Yeah, it was
good conversation.
I enjoyed it very much.
It is, when you actually get into it, it's frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's sad. It is sad.
I mean,
but you know what always struck me as a strange thing is that a guy like Roberto Donadoni, one of the best players I ever saw, could take a ball from 100 yards and 50 yards and ping it with either foot right to somebody, a Ray Hudson type of guy, you know, ping it perfectly to this guy, perfect pass. You put him in front of the goal, and he scored 10 goals in 500 games for AC Milan. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just a different world. And goal scorers, it's a rarity. Your heart slows down where everyone else's pumps up. Your leg moves faster when everyone else are just slow enough and right at the right moment.
Well, funny enough, talking in the Juventus thing, not mentioned in here, but I mean, one of the worst footballers I've ever seen and one of the best goal scorers I've ever seen was Felipe Inzaghi.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just a great goal scorer.
Yeah.
Great goal scorer.
All right. Actually, to be fair, Italy had more of them than almost any other nation.
Yeah.
They produced. Who was the guy with the long hair in the 90s?
Baggio.
No. Late 90s, early 2000s. He was the top scorer about 3 years running in Serie A. Never won a thing.
Don't look at Tony.
No.
A little guy with long hair.
Are you talking about Di Natale? He was
no, not Di
Signori was a guy who scored a lot
Signori.
of goals.
Signori. Who did he play for?
Lazio.
That's it, Signori. And he played a World Cup, didn't he? He played
94 World Cup. Played very well.
Oh, did he? 94?
Yeah, he had gambling problems later, lost a lot of his money and stuff.
But, I mean, he never won a thing, but he scored an absolute ton of goals.
Yeah.
He never did a thing. He never did a thing all game. He won he won a load of games.
Yeah, good
With his
player
goal
though.
scoring.
Good player.
Well, good goal scorer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, you want me to read this or what?
Yeah, let's knock these out. The close
All right.
and then
I'll
that read.
See
Thanks,
you tomorrow
guys.
then. 5 o'clock with Phil, right?
Yep, sounds
And
good.
what are we?
It'll be a lot of
Well done,
Bundesliga
Neely.
recap.
Well done, Charlie.
Thanks, Ray.
Good
Love
stuff,
you.
Pete.
What do we
Cheers,
have,
cheers.
Pete?
Thanks.
Us?
You don't have anything tomorrow. You and Neil are off tomorrow.
Good. Cool. All right. Love you
Thanks,
guys.
Neil. Great work today.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Neil.
Bye.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, lads.
Yeah.
Bye.
And let us know who we've got for Real Madrid. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll take care of it. Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Love you guys. Ready, Pete?
Yep. Whenever you are.
3, 2, 1. That will do it for today's episode of The Hat Trick, presented by the ICC. Special thanks to Patrick Cliver for joining us today. If you haven't already, subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or iTunes. And be sure to leave us a review along with any comments you have for the show. Our entire archive is also available on internationalchampionscup.com. And you can hear the three of us every morning on the football show on Sirius XMFC. For Ray Hudson and Neil Barnett, I'm Charlie Stillitano. Until next time, a domani. 3, 2, 1. You're listening to The Hat Trick, presented by the ICC. If you like what you hear, give us a review on iTunes or Spotify, along with any feedback you have for the show. All our podcasts, including recent exclusive with Gareth Bale and Kenny Dalglish, can be found at internationalchampionscup.com. Back to the show. All right.
Nailed it. Dude, Betigo was fantastic.
Yeah, he was
What a
good,
great
wasn't
interview.
he?
Yeah, that
was
was
good.
really good. And
He was
once
good.
you really started talking about the city of Turin, like you can really see how
He's a
much
real
the city means
Torinese
to
guy.
him. Yeah.
You know, real Torinese guy.
Yeah. So that
All
was
right.
perfect. So
I
good
love
stuff.
you.
Love you, pal. You're off tomorrow. I'll be in
Thanks.
touch and we can figure out what we're doing. For
Tell me what
Wednesday.
you want. Tomorrow, get in touch with what we have to get. Remind me.
That
Okay?
works. Yep.
Love you, kid.
All right. Love you both. Ciao.
Thanks.